Welcome everybody to a look at the first film in the Laurence Olivier's Shakespeare Trilogy from Imprint Films, and it is 1944's Henry V. So this is directed by and starring Laurence Olivier, who in terms of starring roles I've seen him in the likes of Marathon Man, Bunny Lake is Missing, and A Bridge Too Far. Not seen any of his other directorial efforts, although outside of this trilogy he didn't really do much else. And it's an epic drama clocking in at 136 minutes long. Stars alongside Olivier Rene Ascherson, who was also in The Day the Earth Caught Fire and Rasputin the Mad Monk, as well as Ralph Truman, who was in the 1956 version of The Man Who Knew Too Much and the 1948 version of Oliver Twist. And it also stars Ernest Fezziger, who was in three 1930s horror films in the form of Bride of Frankenstein, The Old Dark House, and The Ghoul, all three of which also starred Boris Karloff. So, in the midst of the Hundred Years' War, the young King Henry V of England embarks on the conquest of France in 1415. So, although there is plenty to like about this, it is ultimately the dialogue that hampers my overall enjoyment, as I do find the English language from this period in history quite impenetrable at times. And in terms of that English language, I'm talking obviously about, 16th century, 17th century English language, because obviously this is fully based on the Shakespeare play of Henry V. And yeah, it takes the dialogue pretty much for verbatim from the beginning to the end. So yeah, that does unfortunately therefore make large sections of this easy to misunderstand, and that grows wearisome as a result as the running time goes on. The battle scene that it is building up to is also really rather quite underwhelming, and its length makes the dialogue even more tiresome to follow. Thankfully, the cast is great, the technical format looks excellent, the score is decent, the overall production is impressive given the time it was made. In particular, there's a really rather cool little miniature model of London, circa 1600. So it's going right across. So yeah, you got buildings with smoke coming out and such and such. And yeah, it's just a really impressive miniature, and it gradually goes over towards the globe where a lot of Shakespeare's plays were reenacted. And yeah, it's does a really cool bit of miniature work and it's camera work all at the same time. There are also some engrossing scenes, especially when the dialogue does become that little bit easier to understand. And I like how it transitions from a play to a more realistic setting, as it does start off as a play and then it transitions up to one scene where it's taken above the stage, and then it moves on to the actual the actual moves on to into France and such to depict the scenes in 1415. So yeah, all of that is really nice and really well done, but the dialogue is just so impenetrable at times that I just don't understand what's going on. And even though I did have the subtitles up to try and aid me in that, it really didn't help all that much, to be honest. So yeah, it's a big shame really, because like I said, there are plenty of elements in this that are good, but unfortunately, yeah, it's just a bit let down really by the dialogue, which I understand why it's done that way. It's based on a famous play at the end of the day, but I do feel like, you know, for more modern audiences, especially from the 1940s onwards, a little bit of leeway in terms of realism, in terms of, you know, completely translating it from the play to the film is probably a would be a more ideal thing. So hopefully the next two, Hamlet and Richard III, are a little bit less impenetrable in terms of the dialogue, but I'm not entirely hopeful. And given that they are even longer than this one, it could be a little bit of a underwhelming experience. But yeah, in terms of the 1080p high definition presentation on this release, it looks and sounds really rather good, and it's all done from a 4K restoration as well. We've also got audio commentary by film historian Bruce Eder, and then we've got Henry V, Olivier the Bard, and Churchill, video essay by screenwriter and author Martin Conterio. That's from 2025, and the theatrical trailer on top of that. So yeah, apparently this was a an allegory of sorts for World War II, or at least was made to be, stir up some patriotism in UK society at the time, given World War II. So, whichever way it was interpreted or was meant to be done by or done as a piece of film, it's really clearly did work, because it did make a lot of money at the time, and I think it did make its budget back several times over. But regardless, yeah, that dialogue unfortunately does not make this as good as an effort to watch as I hoped it would be. But still, it gets a 3.5 out of 5 just because of all the positives that I've given it, and I wasn't bored by it either, purely because I was just trying to interpret the dialogue in a way that made the plot make any sense. But yeah, it did make it also a little bit annoying at the times as well. So yeah, which is a bit unfortunate. But I'm not familiar with Shakespeare plays or and such, so if you are familiar with his work, then I imagine you'd get a lot more out of this. And I would highly recommend it to anyone that is a fan of Shakespeare, because I can imagine that it is quite authentic to that play, and also makes it a more cinematic with its battle scene and such and such. So yeah, but overall a decent start to its box set, but not the rip roaring success that I was hoping it to be, given those involved and the plenty of films that I've seen from those involved before that I've really enjoyed. But still, I'm sure there is an audience for this outside of my personal experience. So, but yeah, but nonetheless, thank you for watching. If you have seen the film before, let's hear your thoughts on it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.